would say about machine knitting, there's a rhythm and there's a sound. So because I do a lot of intarsia, I like that, laying the yarn over the needle. So laying the yarn. So I lay the yarn over all the needles. And then I run my fingers across to make sure none of the latches, because the needles have a latch that open and close. And if the latch is closed, you can drop a stitch. So I run my finger across the row to make sure none of the latches are closed. And then I draw the carriage across. But then there's the sound. And when you draw the carriage across, you know whether it's knitted properly or not. It's really a funny thing. So there's that sound. So you're listening and the sound, and that you're knitting and shum, shum, shum. And you hear that sound. So yeah, there is definitely that to it. And it's funny because when I'm knitting, people say to me, do you listen to music? But I can't listen to music when I'm machine knitting, because that takes my brain to another place. And I need to be very much, I suppose, grounded in my work. So I listen to spoken word podcasts or the radio. So I'm grounded. I'm here. I'm not in my music and wafting away.
It's almost like listening to a musician describing their relationship to an instrument.
Yeah.
Hearing you talk about machine knitting. When Muriel and I started looking at these little punch cards that we use for doing our knitting projects, where really we're looking to find where are the holes on the punch card that make the sound. This might not be the same punch card that you use, but I bought these on eBay. And I was like, it's the same principle, where it's a grid, and I presume you make a hole. Like I use a little hole punch like this to make holes on my.
I've got my
punch cards.
It helps you to go quite a few rows. Yeah.
I was thinking a little bit about the mechanism, and inside the music box, you've got like little tines, little metal tines, and the hole says, right, you have to ping, and that produces the pitch. But that's not that different, I think, from in your machine where you've got hooks and the hole says the hook goes through. I wondered if you could.
It's got a drum, and it's the same thing. And the hole is that I need to push that needle forward. So it's the same thing. So it's selecting the needle, and the punch cards are the same. And one of the things that I have, because I'm an artist, so I have, these are tools. So I have different machines. So I have different machines come in different gauges. So that's how far the needles are apart. So you have a fine gauge, which is 3.6 millimeters, up to a chunky, which is 9.9 millimeters. And then the punch cards come in different holes. So you have 12, 18, 24, 30, or 40. So you have different ones. So it's the same. So this is a lace punch card. And you can tell it's a lace punch card because it's just because it's going to punch here. So there's going to be holes here and the rest is going to be knitting. So it's very similar.
It's interesting because our music boxes as well, like we both started off with a 20-note music box. It's just got 20 notes.
Oh, right.
And then we started realizing we can't do some of these tunes that we're trying to translate from the Yarnadelic pop song list. Some of them just don't. We need more notes. So we both got a 30-note music box. And I think you can there's a slightly bigger one, but it's kind of finding the right machine to transpose the thing on. When Muriel and I started looking at these punch cards, we were like, we need to involve a machine knitter in this, because it's so close with the punch cards and the mechanisms and the patterns. And I thought also you and I had talked a little bit about sounds and working with sounds, and it just felt like a really natural choice. And then when I was talking to you about these are some of the songs and this is what we're finding out about, there was Minnie Riperton's Le Fleur, Fatima's Waltz, Music for a Found Harmonium by Penguin Cafe Orchestra. Like, we've been delving into a lot of different songs. What was it about Woman Blue that particularly you were like, no, that's the one that I want to work with, that's the song I'm interested in?
Well, one, because I love blue, as you can see. I am the woman blue. But the other thing was the story behind it, when you told me that it was this black girl in a prison singing this, this verse. And then from there, there's been other verses added by different people. I just thought this was fascinating. And the fact that you couldn't find out who she was, it's kind of like a mystery. And I felt like we need to honor this 18-year-old young lady in prison. You know, why was she in prison? And that so many versions of the song have been made, and it's like I felt like she'd kind of been forgotten because all these other verses have been put onto it. So initially I was thinking that she had written the song, but I realized that we don't know that. She just sang it, and we don't know whether she'd written it or whether it was a popular song at the time. So yeah, just fascinated me.
The song comes from an amazing book of recording, fields recording, by John and Alan Lomax, and I can show you the book. Yeah, American Ballads and Folk Songs, and came from the song. The song came from this book. So the title, a quote, and then an 18-year-old black girl in prison for murder sang the tune and the first stanza of his blues.
I went away and tried to read as much as I could, try and find out who was this young lady, and we haven't found out, you know, many hours trying to find out who she was. And then listening to the different versions, so many different artists have covered the song and so many different verses.
Yeah. And I really love Judy Roderick version of Woman Blue, because it's a very simple song, very powerful, and with fluid and emotional vocals, and a heady, repetitive guitar part, you know, just a picking riff of guitar.
So when you listen to Judy Roderick's version of the song Woman Blue, there's the two levels of the song. There's like the fluid, emotional lyrics over the top, and then this rhythmic guitar.
I know you, rider, gonna miss me when I'm gone. I know you, rider, gonna miss me.
I went back to Muriel's punch card because I thought that's what I'm responding to. Looked at the punch card and the one that Muriel had punched. And if you're a machine knitter, you looked at it, you knew that looking at it, like this is a punch card book, you knew that it would be lace just because of the way it was. So I knew it was going to be lace from just looking at Muriel's punch card. So so that was the decision. It was going to be a lace punch card. I didn't know I was going to go with that. So I worked out the punch card. And then what I had to do, I went to the music, and the music is, the punch card goes horizontally. So where the holes were, I would count the numbers. So I'd do, right, that's line 13. And then that will correspond on here to number 13. But what I had to do was I had to do the numbers across, because as I was punching the card, because I've got punch card on a roll, and I'd lose my place. So I have the numbers here and I go, number 6, and I punch it. And then I looked at the music, and it was a 4x2 rhythm. And I thought, I could do a 4x2 lace. And what that means is when you knit lace on, I'm knitting it on a Brother machine, you have a lace carriage, and the lace carriage transfers the stitches. So what it does, it makes 2 needles go together and makes a hole. And then on the next row, the needles go back and it transfers them back. So I did a 4x2 lace pattern. So it'll be 4 passes of the lace carriage. So that's transfer stitches, 4, and then 2 knit stitches. And that's in to honor the music. So I don't know how well you can see that. So you can see 4 lines of holes, and then the 2 blank lines is where I'm knitting. And so So long punch card. So this is faithful to murals. This was one of the first ones that I knitted, if you can see that. And I really liked it. It was quite random. I really liked it. I thought I loved that. But then I thought, if you could see, there's spaces there, like quite big spaces. And I thought, oh, I could put cables in there. So I knit another one. I don't know if you can see that. This is another test. So I did cables. And the reason why I thought about cables, I thought, right, so this song has gone through many different versions. So the cables are like, for me, that's me bringing, sort of showing that the song has changed and all the different versions. So I thought, well, I'll incorporate cables, but like any knitter, this is just test, but it's like when you get the yarn, you have to use the yarn. So then I got the yarn and I did a test in a different color because I had 2 colors. So this was my test piece.
Using the Yarnadelic yarn.
Yeah, using the Yarnadelic yarn. So I really liked that. And then what I liked was, I liked how the light goes through it. So that was my starting point. So then I tried a piece and I did cables, but I felt it was too busy and I'd lost the actual music. So I thought I have to go back to the drawing board. And the whole idea is that when I'm knitting, I'm just putting the cables wherever I want. I'm responding to the music. I listen to the music and think, right, where are these cables going to go? So it's a very interactive process. And I felt that was too much. So I could show you my final piece. And I love this, and it's framed. And so this is the actual music knitted. I knitted the punch card, then I turned it upside down, then I flipped it. So it's the same punch card, but it's the right way up, the wrong way up, and flipped. What I like about this is that I haven't used punch cards for years. And, you know, when you think about punch cards, you think it's going to be so regular because of pattern repeat. But I love that this is irregular. It's not regular. And just the randomness that just comes because it's done by the music and then the cables here. And then when it's held up to the light, it's just amazing. I'm really pleased with it. So I knew that I was going to do that one. Then I thought, well, what about the lady who made the music? It's like she's still hidden. How am I going to honor her? So I wrote out the verse that she sang. I used the alphabet, 1 to 26, but with the last letters, I changed it so that I could base it on 24. So I changed that so that I could work on the 24. So I wrote out the verse, and then so I have all the numbers for the letters, and where there was repeats of letters, because there's quite a lot of repeats, like gonna and gonna, it's repeated. I would just cut out. So like when it says miss, I would just have 1 S and I would delete the repeats. So then
is that because you can't have holes right next to each other?
Yeah, with lace. Yeah, sorry, I should have explained that. Yeah, you can't have holes next to each other. So I cut out the duplicates. So then what I would have is these numbers like this. So all the numbers that I write down, and that's what I would punch the card from. So then I punched the card just based on her. This is the card. It's not as long as the other one. So this is just that one verse. And again, I've done it on a 4/2 beat. And then I thought, I'm going to knit that in nylon thread. I want it to be see-through, and I want to do another frame that's going to go in front of that piece, because I imagined the piece is hanging and that her piece would be slightly higher. So I'm elevating her, and that when you look through the work, you see all the versions behind. So this is, you won't be able to see that well. Wow. You can see me behind, but this is her verse all knitted in, and it's invisible thread. But what I did was to put some lurex in with it, so it has a kind of like a green tinge. I envisioned the work being hung like that, so this would be in front and it'd be hung on nylon thread in the gallery setting. And then you get the light through this, which is amazing. But you also look through this. And then it's very hard to knit this because it's very delicate. And, you know, I would have to knit one row, and then I have to have a light really close to the machine because you can't see the knitting. And then the whole thing of that, you can't have any weight on it because it's nylon. So it was just a really hard knit, but I'm really pleased with the way that it turned out. And I think it does honor her, because when you look through this piece, she's always center focus because you're looking through her original piece. And although it's see-through, you look through to the other piece. And I think, yeah, that really honors. And what's interesting was I realized that I use nylon thread a lot in my work, and it's those hidden layers. So it's a theme that goes through my work a lot. Where I'm in my studio, there's a photographer downstairs. I was showing this, he goes, oh, I didn't know that could be knitting. And that's what I wanted. I wanted it to be like an abstract painting, and you just come to it and you look at it just like you look at an abstract painting, and you look for the quality of marks, you look for the emotion that evokes, but it's knitting. And it's like, let's elevate knitting in the gallery setting to that, because knitting can have all those emotions. It's another medium, you know, which to me is equivalent to paint or whatever medium you want to do. So
I almost feel like you've made a lens of the
Yeah.
words of the 18-year-old black girl in prison for murder, who we don't know her name. You've created a lens of her words that you have to look through to see the cover version.
I almost want you to forget that it's knit, if you know what I mean. Like, just look at it for what it is, and that, and it's just that randomness. And I like also that you can't really see that now, maybe, like, but it's a bit like, you know, like a shattered bit of glass, that the fragility. When I was thinking about how I would hang the work, because this is a thing about textiles, how do you hang the work? But I was thinking about prisons and the frames and the bars, and that's why I knew I was going to do it, like these metal things to reference like prison. And when they look through the doors, you know, they open it and they look through, or when you go to prison and then there's like a grid and you look through, there's always these squares, and I wanted to reference that in the work, that it's there and that it's bound, you know, it's woven on. So that was why I knew I was going to have these metal rods and the work was going to be framed on there. And, you know, we don't know what she was in prison for. Maybe she's in for murder, but I was thinking about domestic violence and how these things are. And
so the closest that we will ever get to being able to hear this woman who gave this song to the Lomaxes is this amazing 1980s record. And this was released by Rosetta Writes, and she was a Jewish feminist in the 1980s who just was like, women in blues have been overlooked, and she just devoted her life to making these releases. So these were all recorded in she went into the archives and dug out all of these recordings that were made in prison in America by Alan Lomax. And I was like, please let our song be on here. It wasn't on here. Bernice Johnson Reagan wrote an essay for this. These women are my black sisters locked up in jail in Parchman Penitentiary. How close can I get to who you are? How are you feeling? I was jailed in Albany, Georgia during the Civil Rights Movement, but I was jailed with over 200 people, shared a cell built for 4 with 11 women. We were in this condition for a few days and then moved to the Lee County Stockade, where I shared a room with over 60 women. There was bad food, overflowing toilets, but not Parchman. There was the most powerful and prolonged singing I had ever done in my life. The singing I did in jail was a celebration of a stance. So she's talking about being in prison during the Civil Rights Movement, but then she talks about the combined forces of sexism and racism and domestic violence that nearly always led to women being in prison. And she says the women who are given voice through this collection are incarcerated. They may be guilty as charged, or they may be falsely imprisoned. They are not known by us while they are doing their time. These songs are a small artificial window they cut with Herbert Halper and John A. Lomax. And I just think, I just thought of that because you were talking about
it's
the windows.
so true. And so that was just, what was going through my mind. And that's why, the frames, the windows, and you're looking through, you're getting a glimpse on somebody's lights. And also, I just wanted that sense. I mean, I don't know what happened to that woman after, but that just a thing of hope and of lightness, and that she's been elevated and she's going to have that moment of time of being acknowledged, and that no matter how you look at this work, you still have to look at her and see her.
Ryder, where have you been so long? Oh, Ryder, 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 where have you been so long? There ain't had no loving, baby, Ryder, since you've been gone. I'm gonna wake up in the morning, baby, and I ain't gonna say a word. I'm gonna wake up in the morning, baby, and I ain't gonna say a word. I'm gonna eat my breakfast, baby. Oh, then sweet old Hattiesburg. There that little bell keeps a ringing, and that little bell keeps fairly tone. There that big bell keeps a ringing, and that little bell keeps fairly tone. There I'm a lonely, lonely, lonely now. I'm a long way from home. I know you Ryder gonna miss me when I'm gone. I know you, Ryder, don't miss me when I'm gone. You don't miss your little mama, baby. I'm rolling in your arms.
I deal with emotion by making, so the making of the work is really, really important to me. So I'm in the work, and I can't really describe it, but I'm in the work. I'm processing all those emotions, all those thoughts. So I can't divorce the making from the end product, and it's not the same as doing a drawing. The other thing is how people interact with knitting. There's this kind of comfort that people get from knitting. It's quite cozy, and I find that you can do with very difficult subjects using the form of knitting or crochet that you can't do with a painting. It has a different aesthetic and a different feel. So when people see something it's knitted, they're just like, oh, it's knitted and it's so warm. And in a sense, you could draw them in and slap them with truth. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of thing.